I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to know why story truth is truer sometimes than happening truth. Here's the happening truth. I was once a soldier. There were many bodies, real bodies with real faces, but I was young then and I was afraid to look. And now, 20 years later, I'm left with faceless responsibility and faceless grief. What stories can do, I guess, is make things present. I can look at things I never looked at. I can attach faces for grief and love and pity and God. I can be brave. I can make myself feel again. Vietnam was full of strange stories. Some improbable, some well beyond that. But the stories that will last forever are those that swirl back and forth across the border between trivia and bedlam, the mad and the mundane. This one keeps returning to me.
It can't happen. Nobody ships his honey over to Nam.
I saw it, man. I was right there. This guy did it.
His girlfriend?
This cute blonde, just a kid, just barely out of high school, comes right out into the boonies.
She quickly fell into the habits of the bush. No cosmetics, no fingernail filing. She stopped wearing jewelry, cut her hair short, and wrapped it in a dark green bandana. The war intrigued her. The land, too, and the mystery. At the beginning of her second week, she began pestering Mark Fossey to take her down to the village at the foot of the hill. In a quiet voice, very patiently, he tried to tell her that it was a bad idea, was too dangerous. But Marianne kept after him. She wanted to get a feel for how people lived, what the smells and customs were. It did not impress her that the VC owned the place.
Listen, it can't be that bad. They're human beings, aren't they? Like everybody else.
The next morning, she was gone. The 6 greenies were gone too. It was nearly 3 weeks before she returned. Not entirely, not all of her. At daybreak the next morning, when Mark Fossey heard she was back, he stationed himself outside the fenced-off Special Forces area.
She has to come out, sooner or later. She has to. Hear that? You hear? It's Marianne.
The background music came from a tape deck, but the high voice was Marianne's.
Marianne?
For a moment, she seemed to be the same pretty young girl who had arrived a few weeks earlier. She wore her pink sweater and a white blouse and a simple cotton skirt. The girl gazed down at Fossey, almost blankly, and her face had the composure of someone perfectly at peace with herself. In part, it was her eyes, utterly flat and indifferent. There was no emotion in her stare, no sense of the person behind it, but the grotesque part was her jewelry. At the girl's throat was a necklace of human tongues. Elongated and narrow, like pieces of blackened leather, the tongues were threaded along a length of copper wire, one overlapping the next, tips curled upward as if caught in a final shrill syllable.
You are in a place where you don't belong.
This is true. I had a buddy in Vietnam. His name was Bob Kiley, but everybody called him Rat. A friend of his gets killed, so about a week later, Rat sits down and writes a letter to the guy's sister. Rat tells her what a great brother she had, how together the guy was, a number one pal and comrade. A real soldier's soldier, Rat says. Anyway, it's a terrific letter, very personal and touching. Rat almost bawls writing it. He gets all teary telling about the good times they had together. And then the letter gets very sad and serious. Rat pours his heart out. He says he loved the guy. He says the guy was his best friend in the world. They were like soulmates, he says, like twins or something. They had a whole lot in common. He tells the guy's sister he'll look her up when the war's over. So what happens? Rat mails the letter. He waits 2 months.
Jesus Christ, man. I write this beautiful letter. I slaved over it. And what happened? The dumb coos never writes back.
The war was over, and there was no place in particular to go. Norman Bowker followed the tar road on its 7-mile loop around the lake, and then he started all over again, driving slowly, feeling safe inside his father's big truck, now and then looking out onto the lake to watch the boats and the water skiers and scenery. If his father were not such a baseball fan, it would have been a good time to talk.
The Silver Star?
His father might have said.
Yes, but I didn't get it. Almost, but not quite.
How's that?
It's a story.
Slowly then, circling the lake, Norman Bowker would have started by describing the song Trebong.
A river, this slow, fat, muddy river. You couldn't even sleep at night. You'd find a high spot and you'd doze off, but then later, you'd wake up because you'd be buried in all that slime. You'd just sink in. You'd feel it ooze up over your body and sort of suck you down. And the whole time, there was that constant rain. I mean, it never stopped. Not ever.
So tell me.
You really want to hear this?
Hey, I'm your father.
Well, this one night out by the river, I wasn't very brave.
You have 7 medals.
Sure.
7, count 'em. You weren't a coward either.
Well, maybe not, but I had the chance and I blew it. The stink, that's what got to me. I couldn't take that goddamn awful smell.
If you don't want to say any more,
I do want to.
alright then, go slow and take your sweet time.
The Mama Sands just stood there in the rain, soaking wet, yapping away about how this field was bad news. Number 10, they said. Evil ground, not a good spot for GIs. But the rain kept getting worse, and by midnight, the field turned to soup, like sewage or something, thick and mushy. You couldn't sleep, you couldn't lie down, not for long, because you'd start to sink under the soup. You could feel the crud coming up inside your boots and pants. Late in the night, we took some fire. The mortar rounds seemed to come right out of the clouds. Everything was black and wet. The field just exploded. Rain and slop and shrapnel, nowhere to run, and all they could do was worm down into the slime and cover up and wait. The noise was fierce. Heavy thunder and mortar rounds and people yelling. He would have talked about this, and how he grabbed Kiowa by the boot and tried to pull him out. He pulled hard, but Kiowa was gone. And then suddenly he felt himself going too. He was alone. He had lost his weapon, but it did not matter. All he wanted was a bath.
Man, talk about irony. I bet if Kyo was here, I bet he'd just laugh. Eating crud. Classic irony.
Fine, no, pipe down.
Wasted in the waste. Pure world-class irony. A classic case. Bite in the dirt, so to speak. Tells a perfect story.
Enough.
Fine. Like those old cowboy memes. Another one bites the dirt.
I'm serious, man. Zip it shut.
Classic.
The guy's around here somewhere.
Better tell the LT.
Screw him.
Yeah, but
Some lieutenant. Guy camps us in a latrine. Guy don't know jack.
nobody knew.
10 billion places he could have camped us. Guy picks a latrine.
It wasn't the LT's fault.
Whose then?
Nobody's. Nobody knew till afterward.
Yeah, but get this. He knew it was raining. He knew about the river. One plus one. Add it up, you get exactly what happened. Move it. Kyo's waiting on us.
Listen, those dumb jokes, I didn't mean anything.
We all say things.
Yeah, but when I saw the guy, it made me feel, I don't know, like he was listening.
He wasn't.
I guess not, but I felt sort of guilty. Almost like if I kept my mouth shut, none of it would have happened. Like it was my fault.
Nobody's fault. Everybody's.
The truth is, I let the guy go.
Maybe he was already gone,
He wasn't.
but maybe.
No, I could feel it. He wasn't. Some things you can feel.
Well, anyway, there's still the 7 medals.
I suppose.
7 honeys.
Right.
"8 months later, he hanged himself. In August of 1978, his mother sent me a brief note explaining what had happened. He used a jump rope. His friends found him hanging from a water pipe. There was no suicide note, no message of any kind. Norman was a quiet boy, his mother wrote, and I don't suppose he wanted to bother anybody." One afternoon in 1969, the platoon took sniper fire from a filthy little village along the South China Sea. Lieutenant Jimmy Cross got on the radio and ordered up an airstrike. For the next half hour, we watched the place burn. When it ended, we formed into a loose line and swept east through the village.
Place is deserted. The only confirmed kill is this old man. Howdy do. Please does punch.
I was brand new to the war. It was my 4th day. I hadn't yet developed a sense of humor. Right away, as if I'd swallowed something, I felt a moist sickness rise up in my throat.
Be polite now. Go introduce yourself. Nothing to be afraid about, just a nice old man. Respect your elders.
No way.
Why? Is this a little too real for you?
Yeah. Way too real.
In a true war story, if there's a moral at all, it's like the thread that makes the cloth. You can't tease it out, you can't extract the meaning without unraveling the deeper meaning. And in the end, really, there's nothing much to say about a true war story, except maybe, oh.